Every morning, an unusual sight graced the small town. A majestic eagle landing near a stray kitten, seemingly watching over it. Locals watched in awe, perplexed by this unlikely friendship. The kitten, which the children had named Whiskers, seemed comforted by the bird's presence. It became a daily ritual that captivated everyone's attention. The town's fascination turned into concern when they noticed the eagle behaving strangely one morning. Melissa closely watched the eagle as it approached the tiny kitten, and she thought it was going to be just like any other encounter between the two. There was nothing strange about it at first. Whiskers was just being Whiskers, rolling around on the ground, and the eagle landed a few feet away from it, keeping a close eye on it. However, then the eagle approached Whiskers, and it suddenly came a lot closer than Melissa had ever seen it do. And when she saw what happened next, she couldn't suppress a scream. This could not be really happening. The eagle had taken Whiskers in its beak, and it flew away, leaving Melissa completely shocked. "Whiskers!" she yelled with tears in her eyes, and she knew she needed to help that little kitten immediately. But how? One thing was certain, she couldn't do it on her own. But why did the eagle take Whiskers? Where did it bring the kitten? And would Melissa ever find it again? Melissa had been sitting on a bench, taking a break from her daily morning hike, when she smiled as she noticed Whiskers was sitting in his usual spot. Whiskers was such a cute little cat, and even though it was a stray, it was never hungry or thirsty. Everyone in town loved Whiskers, and they all made sure he had plenty of food and water. When the eagle first started visiting Whiskers, many people were a bit suspicious. They thought Whiskers was in danger, and the eagle wanted to hurt it. As time passed, however, and the eagle continued visiting Whiskers without ever touching it, even the worried townspeople started to relax, and they accepted this strange animal friendship. Word spread quickly, and it wasn't long before everyone around town knew about Whiskers and its eagle friend. Often, people were there to witness the special encounters between the two animals, and the whole thing never got old. However, when Melissa saw the eagle take Whiskers away, she was the only one there. She really needed help, but she wasn't even sure people would believe her story. Melissa jumped up and ran back to the town, hoping she'd find help on the way there. The first person she encountered was a hiker from another town who had never heard of Whiskers and the eagle, and he had no idea what she was talking about. Melissa did not give up, though, and she was determined to find someone who could help her. She started running and was completely out of breath when she reached the town. "Whiskers! Whiskers is gone!" she yelled, and immediately people reacted. Everyone who heard Melissa's urgent words gathered around her, wanting to hear the story. "No, that can't have happened," some of them said, but Melissa insisted. They believed her, but they were all completely shocked by this. Why would that eagle ever do such a thing? They asked themselves, and they wondered what was going on. They all hoped Whiskers was okay. But they knew they needed to find the poor thing as soon as possible before it was too late. There was no time to lose. Most of the people needed to go to work, so they decided to work in shifts. Melissa and a few others were going to look for Whiskers first, and the others would take over later. They made a group chat to keep each other updated on the situation and promised they would let the others know if they heard or saw anything that might help. "All right, everyone," Melissa said, taking charge. "We need to split up and cover more ground. Tom, you check the north side of town. Linda, you and Sarah take the park. I'll go see if Randy at the ranger station can help us." Everyone nodded, determination in their eyes. They knew Whiskers' life could be on the line. They grabbed their phones, ready to keep each other updated on any findings. The search was on. Tom and Linda wasted no time. Tom headed north, his eyes scanning every bush and tree, while Linda and Sarah made their way to the park. "Whiskers! Here, kitty!" Linda called, her voice echoing. They checked under benches and in the playground. Sarah even asked a jogger if they had seen anything. Their phones buzzed with messages, but there was still no sign of the beloved kitten. Melissa trekked up the dusty path to the ranger station, sweat dripping down her face. The sun was high and the heat was relentless, but she pressed on. She knew she couldn't give up on Whiskers. Almost there, she muttered to herself, her legs feeling heavier with each step. The station was in sight, and she quickened her pace, determined to find Randy. When Melissa finally reached the ranger station, she was sweaty and out of breath. She leaned against the railing, taking a moment to catch her breath. "Randy, are you here?" she called out, her voice echoing slightly. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, glancing around. The station looked quiet, almost too quiet, and a sense of urgency pushed her to keep moving. "Randy!" Melissa called again, louder this time. She stepped inside, the cool air a welcome relief from the heat outside. "Randy, it's Melissa. I need your help." Her voice sounded desperate even to her own ears. She walked through the small station, looking for any sign of the ranger. The silence was unsettling, but she kept hoping he'd appear any moment now. Melissa wandered through the empty station, peeking into rooms and calling out. "Randy, are you here?" she asked, but there was no immediate response. The place felt deserted. She checked the office, the kitchen, even the back porch, but there was no sign of him. Where could he be? She wondered aloud, frustration creeping into her voice. The silence was deafening. Despite her weariness, Melissa felt a surge of determination. "I can't give up now," she thought. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Randy has to be around here somewhere," she muttered, more to convince herself than anything. She decided to try knocking on the station's door again, hoping that maybe he was just out of earshot the first time. There was still a chance. Melissa knocked on the station's door again, this time with more force. "Randy, are you in there?" she shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. She waited, straining to hear any movement inside. The silence was disheartening. She banged on the door once more, a little desperate now. "Come on, Randy," she muttered, hoping he'd appear and help her find Whiskers. After a few moments, Melissa tried the doorknob, but it was locked. "Great," she sighed, frustration mounting. She jiggled it a few more times just in case, but there was no give. "Why is it locked?" she wondered aloud. She glanced around, looking for any sign of where Randy might be. The locked door felt like a barrier to her finding Whiskers. Melissa called Randy's name a few more times, her voice growing hoarse. "Randy! Randy, can you hear me?" she yelled, but there was still no response. She leaned against the door, feeling defeated. "What do I do now?" she whispered to herself. She was so close, yet it felt like she was at a dead end. Her mind raced, trying to think of the next step. Determined not to give up, Melissa pulled out her phone and decided to look up Randy's number on the internet. "I should have done this earlier," she muttered as she typed. It took a few moments, but she finally found his contact information. "Here we go," she said, feeling a small spark of hope. She copied the number into her phone, ready to make the call. As she dialed the number, Melissa realized she should have thought of this before trekking all the way to the station. "I could have saved so much time," she thought, shaking her head at herself. But there was no point in dwelling on it now. She needed to focus on finding Whiskers. She hit the call button, hoping Randy would answer and provide the help she needed. Melissa called Randy's number multiple times, pressing the phone to her ear with growing anxiety. Each time, the call went straight to voicemail. "Come on, Randy, pick up," she muttered under her breath. She left a few messages, each more urgent than the last. "Randy, it's Melissa. I really need your help. Please call me back as soon as you get this." She hung up, frustration building. With each failed attempt to reach Randy, Melissa grew more desperate. She paced back and forth in front of the ranger station, her mind racing. "What if we don't find Whiskers?" she thought, panic creeping in. She tried calling Randy again, but still no answer. "This can't be happening," she whispered, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Melissa's phone buzzed with messages from her team. They were still searching, but there was no sign of Whiskers yet. "We've checked the park and the north side," one message read. "Nothing here either," said another. Melissa sighed, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. At least they were trying. but time was running out. She typed a quick reply, urging them to keep looking. Just as Melissa was about to give up and leave the station, she heard the rumble of an approaching jeep. She turned to see it coming up the path, her heart skipping a beat. Please let it be Randy, she hoped. The jeep pulled up and her anxiety began to ease. Maybe now they would finally get some answers and find Whiskers. Randy stepped out of the jeep, a look of surprise and concern on his face. Melissa, what's going on? He asked, walking over to her. Melissa felt a wave of relief wash over her. Randy, thank goodness you're here, she said, her voice trembling slightly. He greeted her warmly, and she could tell he was ready to help. Let's get inside and talk, he suggested. Inside the ranger station, Melissa quickly explained the situation to Randy. Whiskers, the stray cat everyone loves, was taken by an eagle, she said, her voice trembling. The eagle has always been friendly, but today it just grabbed him and flew away. Randy listened carefully, nodding as he took in the details. I've tried everything, Randy. We need to find Whiskers before it's too late, she pleaded. Randy nodded thoughtfully. All right, let's figure this out, he said. Eagles usually have specific spots they stay around. We can check those places first. He pulled out a map and started marking potential locations. We'll cover as much ground as we can. It's a long shot, but it's worth trying. Melissa felt a glimmer of hope. Thank you, Randy. I knew you'd know what to do, she said gratefully. Before they headed out, Randy turned to Melissa, his expression serious. I need to warn you, Melissa, he said. Eagles sometimes take small animals to eat. I don't want to alarm you, but you need to be prepared for that possibility. Melissa's heart sank, but she nodded. I understand, but I have to hope Whiskers is still okay, she replied, her determination unwavering. With the map in hand, Randy and Melissa agreed on a plan. We'll check these areas first, Randy suggested, pointing to the marked spots. If Whiskers is out there, we'll find him. Melissa nodded, feeling a mix of dread and hope. They stepped out of the station, ready to begin their search. Let's go find Whiskers, she said, trying to keep her spirits up. As they walked to Randy's jeep, Melissa took a deep breath, steeling herself for what might come. I have to be ready for anything, she thought. Randy glanced at her, giving a reassuring nod. We'll do our best, Melissa, he said. She nodded back, grateful for his support. I just hope we're not too late, she whispered, climbing into the jeep, her heart heavy with worry. Before getting into Randy's car, Melissa quickly updated the team via their group chat, heading out with Randy to check some spots where eagles stay. Keep searching and let me know if you find anything, she typed, hitting send. She then climbed into the passenger seat, her heart racing with anticipation. Randy started the car and they pulled away from the station, ready to begin their search. They drove in silence, the tension palpable. Randy navigated the winding roads, heading to the first spot where eagles typically stayed. It's not too far from here, he said, breaking the silence. Melissa nodded, her eyes scanning the landscape as they drove. She couldn't stop thinking about Whiskers and hoping they'd find him soon. The scenery passed by in a blur as they approached their destination. Randy parked the car a safe distance away from the area to avoid scaring the eagles. We don't want to spook them, he explained as he turned off the engine. Melissa nodded, understanding the need for caution. They got out of the car quietly, careful not to make any sudden movements. The area was serene, with the sounds of nature filling the air. They moved closer on foot, ready to search. Randy pulled out a pair of binoculars and began scanning the area. Melissa stood beside him, her eyes darting around, hoping to catch a glimpse of Whiskers. See anything? She asked softly. Randy shook his head, his focus intense. Not yet, but let's keep looking, he replied. They continued to survey the landscape, hoping for any sign of the little cat among the trees and rocks. After a few minutes, Randy handed the binoculars to Melissa. There are a few eagles up in those trees, he said, pointing. Melissa looked through the binoculars, spotting the majestic birds perched high above. I see them, she said, her voice tinged with frustration. But no Whiskers. Randy sighed. Let's not give up yet. We'll check the next spot, he said, trying to stay positive. They headed back to the car, ready to continue their search. Let's try the next spot, Randy suggested, already heading back to the car. Melissa followed, her heart pounding with anxiety. They needed to keep moving if they wanted to find Whiskers in time. It's a bit further away, but it's worth checking, Randy continued as they climbed back into the Jeep. Melissa nodded, hoping this next location would bring better luck. As they drove, the urgency of their mission weighed heavily on them. Melissa's fingers tapped nervously on her knee, and Randy kept glancing at the clock. We have to find him soon, Melissa said, her voice tight with worry. I know, Randy replied, gripping the steering wheel tighter. The pressure was mounting, and every second felt like it could make a difference in Whiskers' fate. Melissa refused to lose hope. She kept updating the team, sending messages about their progress. Heading to the next spot now, she typed. Keep searching and let us know if you find anything. Her resolve was unshaken. We'll find him, she told herself, trying to stay positive. Randy glanced over and gave her a reassuring nod. We're not giving up, he said firmly. Randy drove quickly, the urgency pushing them forward. The road seemed longer than ever, and every minute felt like an eternity. We're almost there, Randy said, trying to reassure both of them. Melissa stared out the window, her mind racing with thoughts of Whiskers. They couldn't afford to waste any time. The pressure was immense, but they had to keep going. Melissa's eyes filled with tears as she thought about the horrible things that could happen to Whiskers. The thought of him alone and scared broke her heart. Please be okay, Whiskers, she whispered, wiping her tears away quickly. Randy noticed but didn't say anything, focusing on the road. We'll find him, he said again, his voice filled with determination. Melissa nodded, trying to hold on to hope. As Randy drove to the next area, Melissa used the binoculars to scan the skies and treetops. She kept a sharp lookout, hoping to spot any sign of Whiskers. Anything? Randy asked, his eyes on the road. Not yet, Melissa replied, her voice tense. She adjusted the focus, determined not to miss a single detail. The landscape blurred by as they hurried to the next location. Through the binoculars, Melissa saw a few eagles flying high above. She watched them closely, her heart pounding. There are some eagles up there, she said, pointing. Randy glanced up briefly before returning his focus to the road. Any sign of Whiskers? He asked. No, Melissa said, disappointment in her voice. None of them are holding a kitten. She lowered the binoculars, feeling a pang of frustration. Randy parked the Jeep at the edge of the new area, and they both jumped out. Let's start searching, Randy said, leading the way. Melissa followed, her eyes scanning every bush and tree. They moved quickly, calling out for Whiskers. Here, Kitty, Melissa called, her voice echoing in the stillness. The area was vast, but they were determined to cover every inch of it. Melissa scanned the empty, seemingly deserted spot, her heart sinking. There's nothing here, she said quietly. Randy looked around, his brow furrowed in thought. It's strange, he said. This area should have some signs of wildlife at least. Melissa nodded, feeling a sense of dread creeping in. They continued to search, but the place felt eerily empty, with no sign of Whiskers or any eagles nearby. They were puzzled by the absence of eagles in this location. This doesn't make sense, Randy said, shaking his head. Eagles are usually all over this area. Melissa felt a knot of worry tighten in her stomach. Where could they have gone? She wondered aloud. They stood there, trying to figure out their next move. The silence was unnerving, but they couldn't give up now. Suddenly, Melissa spotted an eagle holding Whiskers. There! She shouted, pointing towards the sky. Randy followed her gaze and saw the eagle carrying the small, limp form of the kitten. We have to follow it, Melissa said urgently, her voice filled with determination. Randy nodded, quickly heading back to the Jeep. Melissa's heart raced as they jumped in, ready to chase the eagle. couldn't tell if alive. As they followed the eagle, Melissa strained to see if Whiskers was still alive. "I can't tell," she murmured, fear creeping into her voice. "We have to keep going," Randy replied, his focus intense on the path ahead. The road was rough, but they couldn't lose sight of the eagle. Melissa's hands gripped the edge of her seat, praying for a miracle. Randy sped up, chasing the eagle through a bumpy ride. The jeep bounced over rocks and dirt, making it hard to keep their eyes on the sky. "Hold on!" Randy shouted as they hit another rough patch. Melissa's heart pounded in her chest. "Don't lose it!" she urged, her eyes never leaving the eagle. They raced through the terrain, determined not to let the eagle get away. The eagle landed in a clearing, and Melissa's fear spiked. "What if it's going to eat Whiskers?" she thought, panic rising. Randy slowed the jeep, parking a safe distance away. "We need to be careful," he whispered. They watched as the eagle looked around, still holding Whiskers in its talons. Melissa's breath caught in her throat, hoping they weren't too late. They prepared to intervene as the eagle descended with Whiskers. Randy grabbed a stick, ready to use it if necessary. "Stay behind me," he told Melissa, his voice steady but urgent. Melissa nodded, her eyes fixed on Whiskers. The eagle's wings flapped, and it began to lower the kitten to the ground. "Now," Randy whispered, and they moved forward, ready to save Whiskers. A Whiskers was happily playing with another cat, which Melissa soon realized was its mom. She blinked in disbelief as the two cats rolled and tumbled together. "Is that really Whiskers?" she asked Randy, who nodded, equally astonished. "Looks like the eagle brought him home," he said. Melissa's heart swelled with relief. Whiskers seemed unharmed and joyful, completely at ease with his mother. The eagle had reunited Whiskers with its mother. Melissa watched as the eagle perched nearby, almost as if it was ensuring the reunion went smoothly. "I can't believe it," she said softly. Randy shook his head, amazed. "Nature works in mysterious ways," he replied. The sight of Whiskers nuzzling his mom brought a tear to Melissa's eye. She had been so worried, but now everything made sense. Melissa felt relief and joy at the unexpected reunion. She knelt down, calling softly to Whiskers. The kitten looked up and meowed, then bounded over to her. "Oh, Whiskers, I'm so glad you're okay," she said, scooping him up. Randy smiled, watching the heartwarming scene. "This is incredible," he said. Melissa hugged Whiskers tightly, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. Randy and Melissa marveled at the eagle's unexpected role. "Who would have thought an eagle could be so helpful?" Randy mused. The eagle took off, soaring back into the sky. Melissa watched it go, feeling a deep respect for the majestic bird. "I guess we owe it a big thank you," she said. Randy nodded. "Absolutely. That eagle turned out to be a hero," he agreed. The team celebrated the happy ending for Whiskers. Melissa sent a flurry of messages to the group chat, sharing the incredible news. "Whiskers is safe and sound," she typed, her fingers trembling with excitement. Cheers and emojis flooded back in response. "Let's meet up and celebrate," one message read. Melissa smiled, feeling the joy of the moment. They had done it. Whiskers was finally home. The townspeople gathered to hear Melissa's incredible story. Word had spread quickly, and soon a crowd had formed in the town square. Melissa stood at the center, holding Whiskers, and began to recount the day's events. "You won't believe what happened," she started, her voice full of excitement. Everyone listened intently, hanging on her every word. The story of the eagle's surprising actions left them all in awe. Everyone was amazed and relieved by the happy ending. Gasps and exclamations filled the air as Melissa described how the eagle had reunited Whiskers with his mother. "It's like something out of a storybook," someone said. People clapped and cheered, celebrating the safe return of their beloved stray. The atmosphere was electric with joy and disbelief. Whiskers purred contentedly in Melissa's arms, soaking up the attention. Whiskers became even more beloved in the town. The tale of his adventure with the eagle spread, and people couldn't get enough of the little cat. Children ran up to pet him, and adults smiled, glad to see him safe. "Whiskers, you're a little hero," one person said, scratching behind his ears. Melissa felt a warm sense of community as everyone shared in the joy of Whiskers' return. The eagle continued to be a fascinating part of the community. People began to see it not just as a predator, but as a guardian of sorts. Who knew an eagle could be so protective? Someone marveled. Randy shared stories of eagle behavior, and the bird became a symbol of unexpected kindness. The town's perception of the eagle shifted, and it was now regarded with a mix of respect and curiosity. Melissa and the team felt fulfilled by their successful rescue. "We did it," Melissa said, smiling at Randy and the others. "Whiskers is safe, thanks to all of us." They hugged and celebrated, feeling proud of their teamwork. The sense of accomplishment was profound. Melissa looked at Whiskers, who seemed happy and relaxed. "We make a pretty good team," Randy said, and everyone agreed. The adventure had brought them all closer together.